brushes shouldn't have lightener on it like that, okay? So what I like to do is whatever brush I'm using to stir or mix, we leave it to stir and mix, okay? Actually, I got a dirty one right there. Sorry, you want to make sure that your brush is very clean, because when you're applying your lightener, you don't want it to make a mess, okay? I got lots of towels. All right, let's get rid of some of these. Okay, so these ones are plain, that one's got lightener on it, be careful. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, we're gonna do a partial on Lori. I'm gonna leave the brush out for now because we got quite a bit in the bowl. I'm gonna bring this bowl over. Set myself up nicely. Okay, so the bowl, I'm gonna put it in there. So your workstation is very important to have some kind of organization to what you're doing. This way you're not, okay, if it falls on the ground, it should stay on the ground, okay? So that should be washed immediately, okay? So try to organize yourself well. This way while you're working, you're not gonna make a mess. So my station is ready to rock and roll. So what I'm gonna do is, because I've never highlighted Lori's hair before, I'm just gonna take a section, I'm gonna comb it out, and I'm gonna take a look. So what I've noticed here on Lori's hair is that Lori's had a base break. So she's had a color done and some highlights done. Lori told me earlier that she's never been this dark. So she's finding it to be too dark. And I can tell that Lori's been lighter before, okay, just by looking at the tail end of her highlights. So she needs some highlights, and we're gonna go in and we're gonna go pretty heavy and a little bit of a thicker strand, okay, to give her more blonde. Okay, so she wants to be a blonde bombshell, right? Right, Laura? Okay. So she wants to be lighter, but we also want to make sure that we don't take too large. Okay, that'll make her rooty too quickly, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush. Notice how I put a little bit. I'm going to prime my foil. Okay? Get my foil, get it ready. And I'm going to go in, and I'm going to take my weave. So I'm going to do a medium weave. Not too thin, not too thick. Right? And I'm going to go in, and I'm going to apply a sorry, put her head down a bit. I'm going to take my brush. And you notice I haven't really put a lot at the tip of the hair. Now in this case right here at the bottom, I'm going to go right to the end because she doesn't have enough highlights at the end, okay? So I'm going to go ahead, fold. And you notice how my folds are always very neat? Yeah. Okay? Fold the corner, fold the corner. Now if I was doing a full head and this was my first one, I might fold this corner. So I remember it was my first one. I don't really have to do that, but that's one thing, okay? So you remember where you started off, right? So I'm going to take about half centimeter, and I'm going to drop. I'm going to go right up to against my foil, and I'm going to take. So now we're starting to get into our weaves. Okay, so you start to see sporadic blonde chunks here and there. I can follow those chunks, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try to make her a little blonder, okay? So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to do the same kind of consistency as a weave. But you notice I always have pressure on the hair and drop. But you see I've got that blonde there, but I've got some darker pieces. So let's prime my foil a bit. The Volaplex in her mix. That's why she went higher on the developer. Okay, so I'm going to go in. So I'm going to hit the root. Notice how I'm just fairly close, but not oversaturating, not a lot of product. Because what you want to do is you don't want to overdo it. Now here comes the art. So if you guys are talking, you're not paying attention. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking my section, I'm kind of moving a little bit of the lighter pieces out of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and take that, and I'm going to nail it. And I'm going to cover the product, okay? So I'm going to take this foil, I'm going to leave that out, and I'm going to fold it. So I left out 2 tails, okay? Being that those are already blonde, we don't need them to be any blonder. So I don't want to jeopardize the other highlights that have been there. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go back in. Okay, front clip, half a centimeter or so of hair. Foil. Product on the brush, but when it kind of, so I'm looking at her ends here. She's got a little bit, not enough to worry about, guys, so I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go down to the end, okay? Once we get closer to the top, I'm sure I'll find more blonde chunks there. Make sure the product is on even. And then fold. Now this foil, when it's cut, the next time the person whoever cuts this foil, both edges have to be perfectly straight, okay guys? See how that's not that edge is not straight? Okay. So we're gonna get Lori heck. Edge has got to be straight. I'm very picky, so that's kind of my thing. So now I'm gonna go ahead. So I'm not sure what weave pattern Lori had, but she's got 1, 2, 3 chunks, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create my own weave pattern because there's nothing here really I can kind of balance myself off of. So either she kind of went this way maybe she fanned it. I'm not really 100% sure because I can't really decide. I'm not gonna take all that hair and only put 3 highlights in it. It doesn't make any sense, right? So we're gonna go ahead. Okay. Everybody just wants to challenge me with the foot. All right, so there you go. So we're going to put that down. Okay. I'm going to pick up the hair, lightly go over it. And I'm going to leave that one piece alone. I'm going to leave it out of the equation. I am putting the white in very light. But I'm also taking a very thin section, right? So the key here, guys, is not necessarily the more product is better. Okay, so if you're taking large chunks of hair, the product is the velocity or I'm not sure if I'm using the right word, but the consistency or thickness of the product might not go completely through the hair. Do you understand what I mean? So you get sections that will highlight and sections that won't even saturate the hair. So you want to make sure that your weave is not to the point where it's too thick. And we're keeping them pretty close together, so it should work out quite nicely. So now I'm starting to get into a little bit more of a consistent weave. You see that? She's blonder on the ends. You leave that out of the equation. Bring it up. What base did you have in there afterward? Put a 5 in? Too dark. Okay. How long ago was that? So you're going to see that I'm going in. Now, here's the thing. product will travel. So you gotta be very careful with not oversaturating close to the root area, right? Because the hair will, it's like a sponge, right? So hair will suck a little bit of that product in and kind of make sure that you're a little closer to the root, correct? But you want to be consistent. And if you notice, every weave I'm doing on her hair is very consistent. What's going to happen is wherever she had the color done on her roots will take a little longer to process, which is okay. But what we want to make sure is that we're not overlapping too many of the old highlights, right? Because then you're going to dry those out, right? Or over process them, right?
What's the number of volume that you use?
In this mixture, if I'm not mistaken, Lori did use a 30 volume.
40.
Oh, 40 volume, okay. So Lori did use a 40, but hold on a second, but she added all the plex to it.
So it's 30.
So it's like using a 30 almost, that's correct. Now Lori's, like I said, Lori's familiar with what works on her hair, so I'm not even going to second guess it because she's done this already and she knows her product, right, that she's used. But you notice the placement of my foil, very neat. You notice the angle in which I apply my product on my brush? See how it is? Not like this. Okay. Okay, there's a little bit of a darker band there, so I can be a little bit more creative, right? That's the thing too, once you've got a highlight client and you've done her before, you will see your weave pattern, right? So what you can do is easily grab the regrowth of the weave pattern, right? And try to be consistent. I always suggest trying to be consistent because oh, you're good, Lord. You're good. What'll happen is if you're not, eventually the client will become over lightened and very patchy everywhere. Not necessarily very patchy, but over lightened, but you want to try to keep it as consistent as you can. This way the look stays the same, right? Now, if she wants more, then you could add more or wider weave to each foil, right? Or you can add more foil, correct? So just notice how I'm getting the tail end out, keeping it out. Fold, fold, tuck. No. I'm keeping it very tight together. In other words, Lori wants a little bit more. So we're going to go a little wider. Now, I won't go wider right in the crown because what ends up happening is an abundance of hair is there. When it joins together, it'll look too light in the crown, so that's not good. So in front of the crown, yes, we can up it. We can up our game. So manipulating the foil with my hands is half the battle. It looks neat. It looks systematic. Okay. Take my foil. Notice how I'm using my thumb, my forefinger, right? Grab, put down. Now, you notice I haven't primed it. You can prime it. You guys, I think you guys should prime because it'll help hold the foil in place. a little easier, right? When you're first starting out. And it's easier, especially priming it lower down in the neck, like in the nape area, because what it'll do is it'll hold the foil from slipping, right? So, anybody timing me by any chance? Well, we want to be able to kind of keep an eye on how long it takes me to do a partial on Lori. So I've been going at it for 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Okay. So here we go. So we're going to take this part and we're going to bring it right down. All right. So I'm going to just flip that. Okay. In some cases, what I'll do is I'll start from the front and work my way back here. I'm just going to keep on going forward. I'm just going to ask Lori to put her head back a bit. Depending, Lori wears her hair pretty forward, so I'm going to keep going the same direction. If Lori was wearing her hair back a lot, feathering it back or bringing it up, then I might start here and work my way back to the corner. So you could do that, okay?
Why?
Well, sometimes by going from the opposite direction, Sam, you're going to get a little bit more visual of the highlights on the top of the head. But for Lori, what I've been doing is going in and actually, if you notice, I've been making the weaves a little bit thicker, right? A little bit more per foil towards the top of her head because she's finding that her hair is too dark, okay? And then we're going to put that on there like so. I am actually leaving the foil slightly open. I'm not wanting to grab too much expansion. So what happens is it gives it a little bit of air to poof it out, okay? With my experience, it just depends on what we're trying to do. In some cases, I will close it, but because this is the first time I'm doing Lori's hair, I'm hoping that her foils are not going to expand. In some cases they do, they pop up, depending on if the hair has a buildup of something on it. Easier for me to kind of open and look at them, that kind of thing. If I've done her hair before and I'm more comfortable with closing it, I will. When you close it, what you're doing is you're locking in all the strength into the product, right? But because she's already using a very strong developer in this case, but because if it's got Olaplex in it, it dilutes it a bit. And Lori's hair is maybe a little bit more difficult to lift. And it might be because she's got some banding going on with the base color that was on there. It looks a little darker in certain areas. So we'll leave it open and play safe. But you notice at all times, right? I'm trying to keep the existing highlights out of the equation, right? You notice that I'm leaving it out, right? Except in certain areas where I think that, you know, he needs a little bit more, or the highlight itself is not sufficient enough. We'll go over it. Now, if you guys are going to do 40 volume, I would probably never suggest doing 40 volume ever in foiling because you're not quick enough to process it.
Finish whole hair, the bottom is
Already done, correct.
Yeah.
But because Lori she knows her hair and there's Olaplex in it, you have to bump Olaplex one stronger up. Okay, and that's why this is what we've done, okay? Because the manufacturer suggests that, okay? So you gotta make sure you follow what this manufacturer suggests. Oh, try not to move on. fold, fold. No, Lori was moving on that one. Let me just double check and make sure we're good. We're good? So we're getting closer to the front. So Lori has, I think, pretty well where is a definite part. So what we're going to do is when we're foiling, we're going to have a little bit of fun with the part that she goes to one side. So we'll make that a little bit brighter. And I'll show you how I can do that without changing my actual foil consistency or application. So we're getting towards her bang area. And Lori always brings it over to the side, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in a little wider and then slowly go back to my smaller weave. So I'm getting a little wider here and back to thinner here. Okay? So we're going to consistently do that. Okay, flip, put it down. It's going to give me a little bit more result towards the front of the hair, or a little bit more highlights in the very front. Okay, so there we go. We're going to knock that over to the side, foil in. Okay, 1, 2. Now we're going to do the same thing again. We're taking Lori's bang section. I'm going to go a little wider here, a little thicker, and then start going thinner towards this side. Okay. Cool. Now we're doing it again. A little thicker towards that front portion. The foil. It's awesome. Foil. Take your bend. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave slight veil out of the equation. You see that? Right? I left a little bit out, right? Just a little bit. Now we're going to go in and we're just going to even that out. The reason why I want to do that is just in case Lori decides to put her hair up and push that back forward, it won't be as chunky towards the very front. Now some people like coloring the veil. I personally like staying slightly away from it, depending on what kind of look I'm looking for. But in this case, because I'm highlighting, I like to highlight right into it. So you just leave that little bit of softness, okay? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take a section like this. We're going to work Lori's way here. That's where we put her head to the side. I'm going to go a little thicker towards the bottom. And would someone cut me a couple more foils, maybe? About the same length. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that in there like that. So when someone asked me about foiling, so see I closed it?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah. thank you. Okay, so we take that. So we're gonna do is take my slices. Okay, I'm taking Lori's section here. So here we're gonna go 2 foils. 2 wide, yeah. Take a little bit of a larger chunk. Okay. Close. So, am I being pretty consistent? You guys? So when I'm foiling, I really like to use a light foil. Reason why I like to use a light foil is it's just easier to bend. She was covered. She was completely covered when she walked in.
Sorry?
She was completely covered when she walked in. So you probably want what to do as well.
Thank you.
You need 2 chairs there.
Yeah.
So I want to have to get up from the chairs. Bring them to the front. The outlets are okay. You're fine.
So what you're noticing what I'm doing here is I'm just going to take a little piece of hair, get it out of the way. I'm going to take Lori's hair, make sure I'm neat.
Sarah, is there another chair there or no?
Yeah.
Okay. You take that. Okay. So that side's done. What I want to do is make sure this stays like so. taking a slight angle from the crown to the back of the ear. Set down. My partials, I always do that. All right. You always will find that you'll have more hair on one side of the head than you will the other. That kind of happens naturally. Usually on patterns, there's both patterns. You notice how I'm making a wider weave towards the bottom, giving it a little bit more blonde towards that bottom. You know, Lori's mixed enough lighter, she knew exactly what she needed for her hair. I'm almost done the lightener. So there's no waste. Very important. Years ago, they used to, in salons, they used to have what was called a waist bucket. This is something you guys might be faced with. And what the owner would do is you'd have a bucket with your name on it. Every color that you did, if you had any extra, you would put it in the waste bucket. And then what they would do is they would weigh the waste bucket. And then deduct that from whatever they were paying you. So,
Which you approve?
no, they had a bucket for all the color. You would throw it into a bucket, and then they would weigh the bucket. Yeah, that was something that when I started years and years ago, that's what they would used to do. Because if people would mix stuff that, you know, waste be very wasteful, right? And that kind of slowed the wastefulness down because you knew you had to pay for it. When you knew you had to pay for it, you weren't mixing, you know, you were mixing what you needed. So that's important, right? At the end of the day. So here we're going to go back to 2 foils again. This is getting too wide.
Say what?
Yeah, both. Yeah. The girl and them, yeah. A lot of them have to. You don't, it's for the church, yeah, it's a cleansing.
Okay.
It's a cleansing for the church.
Okay. Do you have your baby clippers?
This one with, you have on. Smart little Richard. The girl. It's almost like a cleanse, right? To give them good luck, you know? For health and that is explaining. And I said, yeah, well, listen, if that's, you know,
Yeah, sure.
I do the same thing if that's what I believe, right? Absolutely. So you guys notice that I'm bringing the tail end out, I'm getting a little wider towards the front. Now I'm going up towards the top. So I'm gonna get you guys to do a foil count for me once I'm done. see where I'm at, just so you guys get an idea. And then what we'll do is we'll stop the video when I do my last foil. Okay. Awesome. Cool. You guys like that? All right, so